turn it over to Tammy, I'd like to cover some basic housekeeping items and then provide a brief overview of our company. So all participants on this call will be in listen-only mode, which means that everyone on this call is on mute. You can submit questions to Tammy at any time today by typing them in the chat feature, which is located on the left side of your screen. Make sure you state your questions clearly, and do keep in mind other webinar participants will not see your questions or comments. Your questions to the speaker will be anonymously addressed as time allows towards the end of the presentation. And if you still have unanswered questions or would like to request additional information about our services, you are welcome to use the contact information that's provided throughout the presentation. You can also fill out the contact forms found on Perficient's website. Please note that today's webinar is in fact being recorded and will be sent to you within just a couple of days, along with a link to the PDF version of the presentation. So now that we've covered the logistics, let's move on to a quick overview of Perficient. Perficient is an IT consulting company that offers a whole host of IT solutions for a variety of industries, including, of course, life sciences, as well as others such as financial services, consumer products, insurance, and a couple of others. We have employees and offices all over the world, including the locations you see on this slide. And as you may expect, most of our clients are based in North America and Europe. This slide right here contains a bunch of facts. Just to point out a few, we were founded in 1997. We're a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ. And at the moment, we have a little over 2,000 employees. So Perficient offers its clients many different types of business and technology solutions, from business process management and information management to content management systems and portals. We really have a broad portfolio of solutions that we work with. And when it comes to services, we provide essentially what you would expect from an IT consulting company: implementations, upgrades, cloud hosting, application support, project management, and so on. But when it comes to life sciences specific IT applications, we cover the data management and EDC space, safety and pharmacovigilance, clinical trial management, data warehousing, and analytics. As many of you know, we historically have a strong relationship with Oracle, although we do work with a handful of other partners in this area. Now that I've covered the housekeeping items and the overview of Perficient, I'd like to now pass it over to today's presenter, Tammy Dutkin.
Hi everyone, this is Tammy. I am the Director of Clinical Data Management and EDC here at Perficient. I've been with Perficient for going on 4 years now. I have over 20 years of experience in the biometrics space. Previously, I've been the Vice President at a small boutique full-service CRO, and then the majority of my career I spent as a Vice President at a biometrics CRO here in Chicago. So today we're going to be covering, we're going to be covering how to go about creating custom roles and to go about testing those as well. This is a pretty focused topic. I don't think we're going to take the full hour for this, but I will certainly have time for questions at the end. So we're going to cover why someone may want to create a custom role, how to go about creating that role, and then the various pieces for creating that role. So granting the necessary access and privileges, granting the new role to the appropriate user accounts, updating the different reference code lists and other admin settings, and then overall how you go about testing the new roles as well. So the first thing that you need to do for creating a custom roles, or why would you want to do this, you will want to create custom roles specifically if you have, if the out-of-the-box roles don't fulfill your company's needs. Most of the time this is for RDC, especially if you are using the whole DCI blinding feature. But it can also be done with your OC users as well. For example, maybe you have users that are dialing in from a CRO and you want to limit what it is they can see compared to what your internal company users can see. So for this, you may need to set up some custom roles to be able to limit people's access. So the first part of creating a custom role is you need to actually log into SQL Plus and create that database role on the back end. This just shows you the little SQL query that you're going to run in order to apply that role. And the example that we're going to be using throughout this presentation is we're going to be setting up a custom role that we're going to call RxC_BRWS for browse. And we're going to be looking to create a role that's specific for browse-only users. So once you run this little SQL statement, this will actually create that database role. And then we have to go and we have to explicitly grant all the database privileges required for the users that this role is going to be assigned to. Once that database role is created, one of the first steps that you'll need to do is you'll need to go into your DTK and assign the actual role menus that this role is going to be able to see. So in this example here, we've navigated to the Oracle Clinical Data Entry menu, and we're going to give them access to this just to browse for the CRF login and data entry. In order to do that, then we just need to add this new user, this new database role, to the roles that are assigned to that menu. Once you've done that, you can also then go into the OPA menu roles code list. This is a code list. You can either do this through the DTK or you can do it through Oracle Clinical. And you will add this new RxC browse database role to the menu roles. You'll have to come up with a short name of what you want that to be abbreviated to. You don't have very many characters here, so we've decided to call it a DEB, or a data entry browse role. And we've put in a description here just to make sure that we don't lose track of what this custom role is being designed to do. Once you've added it to the OPA menu roles code list, if you then run the report for the menu roles matrix, you'll now see that the DEB role here has been granted access to data entry and they've been granted access to browse. So this report is very helpful for keeping track of what each user, what each database role has been assigned for in the menus. Okay, so now we're going to actually go in and we're going to create a new user for that specific role. So this too is done in SQL Plus. You're going to log in as whatever your system user is, and we're going to create a username called testbrws, and we're going to use this account in order to test to make sure that we've created the new role appropriately. You'll need to then grant whatever database roles are needed for this new user, including the new database role of RxC_BRWS. There are multiple reference code lists that need to be updated to include this new role that you've created. So one of the first ones is your user groups. Under user groups, you'll see we've gone down here and we've created a new short value for the RxC_BRWS role that we're going to call BRWS. And it's important that you remember what it is you call it here, because this is going to come into play with a couple of the other code lists that you have to create. Once you've added it there, then you're going to link that user group role with the actual database role that you've created. So you'll see here we've added the additional RxC_BRWS, which is our database role, to that new user role that was created, which is the BRWS, and we've given a description here. So this sets up the link between the user group as well as the database role. Next, we need to decide if we are going to create a new reference code list value specific for those new browser reviewers. Now, this step does not need to be done if you are not going to have a specific discrepancy status that's going to be earmarked for those people. So in this example, we actually are creating a new status code. We're going to call it the BRWS REV for review. And what this is going to allow us to do then is that when we're managing discrepancies, we can actually set the discrepancies to the status of this role right here. And after we've applied this to several other code lists, this can be flagged so that it's assigned and shows active for those browse reviewers. But again, if they're not doing discrepancy management and or you've decided that they will not have their own status code, then this step does not need to be done. Next, this person is going to be doing discrepancy management via RDC. There's two new code lists that you need to create specific for that user role. The first one is going to be the discrepancy actions, and then you're going to put the new role, which is that user role that you created several screens ago, the BRWS, and you need to make sure that this matches exactly with whatever it was that you, however you set it in that original code list. Then you will pull in all of the different reference code list values, and you're going to make them either active or if there's a specific default. What these are going to allow us to do is then this browser user is going to be able to set discrepancies to any of these values. So this is important because these are how the discrepancies can be actioned by this browser role. The other code list that needs to be set up then is for the discrepancy status. And what this is you're going to create the discrepancy status with the new role name here in the title. This is going to show what discrepancies are going to show up in RDC for this particular role and what color they're going to appear as. So discrepancies can either appear as closed or they can appear as other, meaning they're going to show up as yellow for this browser role. If you've created a new role or a new code list value specific for the browser role, then you're going to set that as active, and any queries that are set to the browse review status will then show up as red for these users. If you've added a new status code for your discrepancies, you also need to add that status code to all of your other roles, discrepancy actions, and discrepancy status code lists. So if you have the standard ones of CRA, site, data manager, investigator, you need to make sure that you set their discrepancy actions and that you include that new status that you've created in the other code list. You'll add it at the end here along with a long value. And here you're going to say what color that discrepancy is going to show up for the users that correspond to that code list. Okay? So this is only if you have set up a new status for your discrepancies, and it's only needed then, but you have to apply it to every single one of your users. So all your user roles, you have to go into each one of these code lists and make sure that you have added that additional short value to your list. Now, one thing about Oracle is if you miss one or you add it wrong, maybe you have the wrong short value or whatever, your users, something's going to be broken, and you'll notice it then when you go in for your testing. But there's no error anywhere that appears to point you to the direction of where your mistake is. So you need to make sure you're very careful and that you really know what all the code lists are that you need to update and what values you've used for your short values and your long values so that you can make sure that you do this correctly. I put together some sort of checklist or whatnot just to make sure that you are hitting every single code list that you need to update. The other thing that you'll need to do is if the new role is going to be doing discrepancy management in Oracle Clinical, you need to make sure that you go in and you update the discrepancy management user group admin to add that new role of BRWS to the list. So this is only if the user is going to be doing discrepancy management via OC. If they're not, then you don't need to do this step. This too is another optional thing that you may need to update. If the new user is going to be doing discrepancy management in OC, you may also need to create a new discrepancy management profile for them as well. So in this example, we've actually created a new browse master profile so that then when they go to discrepancy management, they'll have this option to be able to pull discrepancies that are specific for them. If you're using RDC and this role is specific for RDC, another step that you're going to need to remember to do is to go into the default DCI access by role and set that role as either restricted or unrestricted. Keeping in mind that this can be overridden at the study level, but you need to set it at the global level. So in this menu option, you need to have all of your choices for your user roles. So you can't be missing any. So if you're adding any new roles, you need to make sure that you go in and add it to this table here. There's also an additional table for the test access. So that as well, if you're going to be using the test access for RDC, you need to make sure that you go under the default test access and make sure that you've added that role there as well. Once you've done that, for any of your studies that this user is going to have access to, you need to go in and you need to set their study-specific DCI access. So this is under your definition of your study. In this example here, we are giving the browse user, we had set them as a restricted user back here. So that means that they have access to nothing except for items that we give them access to. So we are including these forms and they are either going to have access from their study site privileges or they're going to have browse-only access to specific forms. And we need to set this at any study level for studies where these users are going to be logging in using the user role of browse. Once you've done that, you also need to set their study and or study site access. This is at the user level. So we've gone in and we've given this user that we've created, the test browse user, access to this one study here, and they've given access to be able to browse case report forms in RDC as well as update discrepancies. So if we log into RDC as this new test browser, we'll see that they have been, they're able to pull up the case report forms. They have access to the study that we've granted them. And you'll see that they don't have access to any of the treatment ECRFs because at that, they've been not granted inclusion for those case report forms. For the PE case report form, this was one that they were given browse-only access. So you'll notice if they open up the case report form, it'll be watermarked with browse in the back to indicate that they can only view the form. They can't update it or do anything with the form other than look at it. For something like the demography ECRF, this they were given access to be able to update discrepancies. So you'll notice that they're able to view the discrepancies here, and then they can also action to send those discrepancies to other people. Really important that you thoroughly test this to make sure that one, you're able to action the case report forms to the statuses that you've established in their code list, and that logging in as a different user, that you're able to action case or action discrepancies and send to this particular user, and for this user that it would show up as red. Okay, this should be all part of your testing. So that's one of the big take-homes is, like I said, there's no warning messages if you miss a step. So if you forget to update a code list, or you don't enter the right abbreviation for what that new user role is, it's not going to work. But there will not be any bells, whistles, error messages or anything that will pop up telling you what specifically the error is. So you need to make sure that you thoroughly test what the customization is against your original requirements, and then make sure that you've fully documented exactly what it is that you did. This is really important too, because we've seen it happen that during upgrades, sometimes custom roles don't get moved over with the correct access privileges that it was expected. So you need to make sure that you're going in and really testing those during your upgrades or patch applications as well, to make sure that those new user roles have not been modified in any way and are still doing what it is you expect them to do. You should make sure that you have some sort of standard operating procedure and work instructions in place for such customizations, and making sure that you always know what all of your custom roles and your custom user roles, et cetera, are, and that they're documented fully, so that if anything happens, you can go back to what the requirements were originally. All right, well, that's all I have for that. Does anybody have any questions or comments that you would like to make?
Thanks, Tammy. I appreciate that. So go ahead and ask your questions if you have any in the chat feature. Keep in mind your questions will be anonymous to everyone else except Tammy and myself. And at the moment, we don't have any questions, but we'll give it another 30 seconds to see if anyone has anything about database roles. Okay. So in the meantime, while we wait to see if we have any additional questions, I'll go ahead and put this slide up here with contact information. Tammy's email address is right there. If you have to reach sales, you can email or call. And so it looks like we don't have any questions regarding the presentation. So that will do that. We're letting everybody go nice and quickly. But if you do have questions, feel free to, again, email Tammy or the lifesciencesinfo@perficient.com email address. We'd be glad to help you with your needs and answer your questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Tammy, for presenting. And we have several webinars coming up. Our next one is on digital signatures. That's taking place in December, and this is going to showcase how Perficient has implemented CoSign, which is a digital signature solution for our own life sciences group, and how many other pharma, biotech, CRO, med device companies are using these electronic/digital signatures to streamline their processes. So we look forward to you attending those, and again, thank you so much for joining today's call. Take care.